Hello there, greetings and salutations. It's me, Dad, and we're back again with another session of Dad, I Want to Hear Your Story. And in this session, in this episode, in this video, we're diving into becoming and being a dad. So I've got a bunch of questions that they asked me about being a dad, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So it says, first question, how old were you when you first wanted to become a father? And my response was, I don't remember a time that I didn't want to be a dad. I mean, maybe it's just part of who I am, but even growing up, I always knew that I was going to get married and I was going to have a family. And I was going to be a dad. I was going to be a father. I always knew that. And I have a highlight talk about Terry. So I don't know if I've ever talked about in outside of this video series my best friend Terry, who's no longer with us, but I met this guy Terry Lang when I was in the Army. I think I was maybe 19 years old, 18 or 19. Met him in 1987, so that's when I met him. And he got married like maybe a year after I met him. He had a girlfriend, his fiance, who lived in Washington State, and he went home on leave, got married, drove up to Alaska, and it was me, my best friend Terry, and his wife Colleen. And he had a child, yeah, he had a baby before we ever left Alaska. So I'm in my early 20s and hanging out with my best friend and his baby. So I was always comfortable being around babies. I was always very good with little children. And yeah, I knew that someday I was going to get married and I was going to be a dad. I was going to be a father. So I don't ever remember a time when I didn't want to be one. How old were you when you did become a father? So I was 29 years old when Julianne was born. There you go. So I guess I was 30 something when Michael was born. And then I don't know how old I was when Faith was born, but anyway. Yeah, I was 29 when Julianne was born. Who was the first person you told when you're going to be a dad? I said, well, I don't remember specifically who I told. More than likely, it was my parents and then my sisters and then, of course, everybody I knew. And it says, the next one, describe the reaction. Well, before I describe the reaction, I think it's appropriate to tell the whole story about Laura, who was my first wife, the mother of my first two children, Julianne and Michael. So here we go. I kind of wrote some notes. So Laura not having a period and not being able to have children. So from the time that I met Laura, and through our dating and our engagement and getting married, I knew that becoming a father with her was not going to be easy. Laura, when she was, I think, 13 or 14, stopped getting a period. Just stopped getting a period. And whatever tests, they don't know why she would not get a period, but they put her on medication to get her to have a period. But just because you have a period doesn't necessarily mean you're ovulating. And the period was just to keep her hormones in check. If she was going to go on vacation in a month or so, she wouldn't take her medication and she wouldn't get a period, and it was all good. But she would take this medicine, she would get her period. But we knew that she didn't ovulate regularly, so we knew that getting or having a child was not going to be the easiest thing to do. So after we got married, I think it was probably about a year or so. I mean, I have to go back and look at the dates, but we got married. We lived in an apartment. We lived in an apartment for a while, and then we bought a house. And it was about a year after being in the house is when we had Julianne. So we move in the house. We're like, hey, we're going to start a family, and we knew she's going to need help. So we went to a fertility clinic, a fertility specialist, and he was like, we went through the whole medical history and everything, and she's like, I don't want to know why I don't ovulate. I don't care to know why. I just want to have a baby. And that was Laura. She's like, don't tell me what's wrong. Just get me a baby. So the fertility doctor said, okay, well, we're going to use follicle stimulating hormones and we're going to do these injections and we're going to monitor you and we're going to do ultrasounds to look at your ovaries. And when we see that there's lots of eggs that are available, we're going to give you another shot to release the eggs, and then we're going to take your husband's sperm and we're going to use a turkey baster and we're going to inseminate you with your husband's sperm and we're going to hope for the best and see if you get pregnant. So that's what we did. I would have to give her these god-awful injections of hormones, and it was a huge needle. This thing was awful. And I'd have to give her injections in like the top of her hip, around her top of her buttocks. That's where they went. And, you'd have to do them for like 7 to 10 days. And then, whatever, they would go in to get checked every day and they would do the ultrasound on her ovaries. So we did this and, they're like, all right, you got several eggs cooking and everything looks great. And then I went into the office the day that they were going to do the insemination and I gave them a sample and they spun it up and filtered out all the sperm and, did the voodoo that they do, and they injected it in there and they said, okay, hope for the best. So I remember after about 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they said, don't do a pregnancy test because they're not as accurate as the ones we're going to do in the office. Well, Laura was not she was not the most patient woman in the world. So I remember let's say we were supposed to go to the doctor's office on a Friday, right? She took a pregnancy test on Thursday and it was negative. And man, she was she was so upset and just so down. And I'm trying to be, uplifting, excuse me, and encouraging. And I'm trying to say, look, just because it's negative here doesn't mean it's going to be negative at the doctor's office. Maybe it's too soon, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I remember, let's say it was Friday morning. I'm in the living room putting my shoes on or doing whatever, get ready. Excuse me. Hold on. I got to pause this for a minute. Okay. Yeah, it's still recording. I have a cold and I have a tickle in my throat. And I remember her running out of the bedroom with the pregnancy test, and she's like, "It's positive. It's positive." I'm like, "Really? It's positive?" She's like, "It's positive. It's positive." So we went to the doctors, and sure enough, they did the test, and it was positive, and we're like, "We're gonna have a baby," And I mean, it was the greatest feeling in the world knowing that I was going to be a dad. And through the whole pregnancy, I mean, it was pretty standard pregnancy. There wasn't any issues, and yeah, Julianne came and she was born. Let me see. So I had not knowing a period, fertility stuff, taking my sample, did that, waiting, the false, the thing, and then the official day, and yeah. So that was the whole thing, and then of course all of the family. Laura's parents, Laura's grandparents, Laura's cousins, my parents, my family. Everybody was waiting with bated breath because they knew what we were going through to get pregnant. Side note, so we had to do it once for Julianne. Come time to have child number 2, the first time we did it, it didn't work. And I remember, oh gosh, that was rough. Those shots, they were not only painful. Hold on, I gotta pause this again. Okay, sorry about that. I got a cold and a tickle in my throat, and I was coughing really bad. So, as I was saying, the first time with Julianne worked great. Second time with Michael, the first time we did it, it didn't work. It was awful. And I remember going to the doctor's office and them doing the test and confirming, yeah, it didn't work. And the doctor's like, do you want to try again? You want to do it again? And immediately I was going to say, let's take a break. And Laura's like, nope, no. I said, or I wanted to say, let's take a break and try it again. And Laura's like, no break. Let's just start again. And so the doctor's like, okay, order more hormones, do the injections again. And then the second time it took. And each time, there was the risk of multiple. Like it was just a blessing that of multiple eggs they were not harvested and fertilized outside. We didn't do that. It was her ovaries created the eggs. They gave her a drug to release the eggs from her ovaries. Sperm inseminated them. So it's a miracle that we only had one child each time we did it. So that was the story of becoming a dad for Julianne and then Michael. And then I became a dad with Erica and Mark. They were just a little older, but still became a dad with them. And then for Faith, it was, oh, hey, guess what? I got pregnant. And oh, wow, hey, it wasn't a planned thing. Just kind of happened, but what a blessing, right? What a blessing of all of my children. What were your child's lengths and weight at birth? I have no idea. I can barely remember people's birthdays. You think I'm going to remember how much you weighed or how big you were when you were born? I know the information is written down in your baby book. So if you find your baby book, you can get that information of how big you were, the whole bit. What were your kids' deliveries? Were your kids' deliveries late, early, or on time? I'm going to assume that they're all generally on time because they were all C-sections. So it was like, okay, you're all ready. You're all done cooking. Let's go to the hospital, have a C-section, and away you go. The only difference is with Faith, you were on time, but you were going to be, no, I'm sorry, with Laura in the hospital, with Julianne, Laura went into labor. We went into the hospital. They were given Laura Pitocin and Pitocin and all the drugs to kind of speed along the contractions and everything, and just nothing worked. We're in the doctor's office. We're in the hospital. She had the epidural. We see on the contraction monitor thing, contractions were coming, but just nothing happening. So the doctor's like, all right, you know what? Bag this. We're just doing a C-section. And then same thing with Michael. In the hospital, contractions, not dilating, not effacing, just nothing progressing. All right, we're doing a C-section. Faith, in the hospital, we're just going to do a C-section because you were high-risk pregnancy because Tina was older. So, I'm going to assume that you were all done cooking, so you weren't late, you weren't early, you were right on time. Is there a special song or songs that you would play to your children when they were little? I know just this one stuck in my head. Mambo number 5. If you Google Mambo number 5, a little bit of Monica in my life, a little bit of Jessica by my side, a little bit of Dina, da da da. That would calm you down. Both Julianne and Michael, for whatever reason, that song we would play. And Michael, there was another song. You were so colicky. Gosh, were you colicky. And there was a song. Now, wait, I'm going to pause this. Hold on, because I got to figure out what it was. Okay, I can't remember the song, Michael, but there was a song that we would play. Remind me the next time I see you. That we would play when you were screaming because you were so colicky, and for whatever reason, this song would calm you down. And I also know, Michael, that when I used to feed you, I would hum the go to sleep. So I'd have you in my arms, and I'd have a bottle in your mouth, and I'd and I would do that while I was feeding you or rocking you to sleep. And that helped. That helped calm you down and help you to sleep. So, looking back, what would you change about how your kids were brought up, if anything? I do have a lot of regrets about how I raised my children. I just do. Looking back on my life, there were a lot of things that I did as a dad, as a father, that I'm not proud of. One of the things that I pulled out a Bible verse this morning, Colossians chapter 3, verses 21 to 23. And let me read this. It says, you children must always obey your parents, for this is what pleases the Lord. And your husband, oh, no, you children, you must always obey your parents, for this is what pleases the Lord. Fathers, don't aggravate your children. If you do, they will become discouraged and quit trying. And that don't aggravate your children. Don't aggravate your children. Don't instigate your children. Don't, just, it goes along with, I have lost my temper many, 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 many times with my children. And I regret every single time I've ever lost my temper with them. If you look in the world and us as humans, a lot of times there's this cycle of your father did it to you, you do it to your son, your daughter, your daughter and son will do it to their children. This I don't want to call it abuse, but cycles of parenting that are not beneficial, that are not loving. I did a lot of those things to my children that I regret. I hope, it is my prayer, that my children forgive me for those things that I did to them, that I'm not proud of. If I could go back in time, I think I would strive to be a better father the second time around. I regret not spending as much time with my children as I could have. It just being selfish for my time. I want to do this. I want to go here. I want to do this. It was me, as opposed to being selfless with me and pouring that into my children. I regret not spending more time with my kids. I regret not giving of myself to them more. Yeah. I would have instilled more fiscal responsibility into my children. I would have taught them or done better to teach them the value of money. I would have instilled more self-confidence in my children. I could, as much as I hope that my children think that I did a good job with them, I hope my children don't look at me and say, gosh, what an asshole. Like my dad, I hope they don't count off all the things in their head that I did wrong to them. I would hope they say, yeah, Dad, you made your mistakes, but here's all the good memories we have. Here's all the things that I know you taught me. Here's all of the benefits and things that you handed to us or taught us or instilled in us. I could probably go on and on and on about regrets, but it is what it is. I hope that my children see my parenting as, you know what, Dad, you did okay. You might not have been in the greatest, but you did okay. Moving on. What are the biggest differences in how kids are raised today when you were young? Now, I only put a couple of things on here, but I could probably go on for an hour. Kids today are not allowed to experience failure and disappointment the way I was. My parents would throw us to the wolves, man. We were allowed to fail. We were allowed to make mistakes. We would suffer the consequences of our mistakes, whatever it was. You hear today about helicopter parents who are constantly doing things for their kids and helping their kids and, doing things on their behalf and making life easier. I think that's what it comes down to. My childhood, my parents did not make life easy for me. If I wanted something, they told me, well, Go do it. Go get it. Go try it. If I needed something from somebody, go ask them. They would rarely do something on my behalf. They're like, do it yourself. And by forcing me to do it myself, I either succeeded or I failed. And if I failed, I learned why I failed, and then they would make me try it again. Obviously, there was no social media, no internet when I was growing up. So the influences of the world were not there. Growing up, we lived in this little bubble of whatever happened in Newton, New Jersey, and the only news of the outside world was what you would find on 3 or 4 channels on TV, and that was it. So we were a lot more sheltered, certainly in the areas of let's adult things, that we were not experienced to as children. So I think it was easier for me to be a child, to be a teenager, than it is for the same children and teenagers of today. Kids today are exposed to so much that their brains are not wired or not equipped to handle. And I think it's just devastating for the kids of today. So, like I said, I could go on for an hour and really talk about the differences, but I think those are some of the highlights. I'm going to stop here because it's 21 minutes, and then I'll pick up on the next question next time I do a video. So for now, thank you for watching. Like the kids would say, like and subscribe, and I will put up another video soon, okay? Take care and have a great day. Bye.